Hello everyone and welcome back to our channel Common Top 10s, where we talk all about the game. So today's video is going to be one of the exceptions to our normal top 10 series, since today we're going to take a look at the Premier League all-time 11. Before you guys start attacking me in what I consider to be a controversial video, since everyone here will have their own opinion and point of view, let me just make it clear that this is a Premier League list. So don't expect players like Kenny Dalglish, George Best or Gary Lineker to feature here. The league was officially formed back in May 1992. It has been 28 years since, and several great players have featured in the list, but some of them don't quite make it here due to their longevity, such as Gianfranco Zola or Ginola, or they don't make it to this list because they made their name out of the Premier League, such as Gareth Bale, who was a tremendous talent in the Premier League, bagging in goals, but really exploded at Real Madrid, where it has unfortunately now turned sour for him. Before we head in, we have to choose the formation which has been mostly used in the Premier League, and in my opinion that would be a flat 4-4-2 formation. This is the formation that has been used by the most successful manager in the Premier League history, Sir Alex Ferguson, so we will go with that. So the format is, we will start with the special mentions, followed by 5 candidates for each role and why they deserve a stake at the claim. Here special mentions goes to Jussi Laskanainen, who spent 15 years at Bolton with over 500 appearances. Despite playing for mid-table teams, he is 13th in the list of most clean sheets in the Premier League. Up next in terms of special mention is David James, the keeper with the second most clean sheets, who will unfortunately be remembered as Calamity James by the England fans due to the costly mistakes he made in the World Cup. And our final special mention goes to Mark Schwarzer, who is the third in the rankings of clean sheets kept. Despite having played mainly for mid-table teams, he did feature for Chelsea but only played a bit part role. Had David De Gea kept that consistency, maybe he would have made it to the top 5, but maybe his mistakes are too fresh in my head right now. But in his defense, just imagine how worse the David Moyes, Luis van Gaal and even Jose Mourinho's era would have been. Yep, an absolute nightmare. It's too early to talk about Edison and Alisson here, so we won't do that. So our candidates for the goalkeeper position are David Seaman, the guy who followed him, Jens Lehmann, Edwin van der Sar, Peter Cech and Peter Schmeichel. Let's start with David Seaman. David Seaman was a rock of consistency behind a watertight Arsenal defence. He was an unbelievable goalkeeper on the pitch and an absolute gentleman off it. Seaman, the self-proclaimed safe hands, and well, you can argue against that name, helped the Gunners to 2 Premier League titles during his times between the sticks for Arsenal. And while he wasn't the best with the ball at his feet, as was the case for most of the goalkeepers at the time, his shot-stopping abilities was phenomenal. He also had this aura of calmness behind the Arsenal back four, which was only really restored when Peter Cech made the switch to North London from Chelsea, even though that calmness lasted for a very short time given his form for Arsenal. So Seaman's successor was none other than Jens Lehmann, who was the number 1 for the Invincibles team. He has made some legendary saves against Man United, Liverpool, which are still replayed till date. He made 148 appearances and kept 54 clean sheets, where Arsenal only lost 23 of those. Up next we have Peter Cech, who marshalled the league's tightest ever defence in his debut season, conceding just 13 times. At his best, he was probably the closest thing to Peter Schmeichel the Premier League has ever seen. Their personalities might have been different, but their sheer imposing physicality was very similar. In those early years at Stamford Bridge, Peter Cech was a key part of the spine that Jose Mourinho had put together, and his performances between the sticks were essential to 3 of the 5 Premier League titles Chelsea have won in their history, and even played a bit part role in the 4th one, where Thibaut Courtois was the main goalkeeper. currently holds the record for clean sheet with 202 in 443 games, an average of around 46%. Our fourth candidate, Peter Schmeichel, made countless saves in his time at United. Famous for his time at United, it was at Aston Villa where Peter Schmeichel became the first goalkeeper to score in the Premier League era. It took Man United 6 years to figure out how to replace the goalkeeper. The one to finally replace him 6 years later after he left the club is Edwin van der Sar, who's our fifth and final candidate on this list. The Dutchman stood between the posts as Manchester United set the record for the most consecutive clean sheets in the 2008-2009 season, with Sir Alex Ferguson in 2009 saying he's right up there with his best ever signings. That's gotta be some compliment considering the company Edwin van der Sar was on that list. Sir Alex Ferguson even admitted that Manchester United should have signed van der Sar in 1999 when Peter Schmeichel left. Well, justifying his inclusion on this list is very easy. He won the Premier League 4 times and won a Golden Glove. Well, from the 5 candidates, it's actually an easy pick for me. Peter Schmeichel has been the best goalkeeper the Premier League has ever had, hands down. His 9 years at Man United earned Schmeichel several Premier League medals, including the famous treble in the 1999 season, and is fully deserving on this place on top of this list. Peter Schmeichel is the Premier League's greatest ever goalkeeper on pure ability, producing some of its most spectacular saves against arch enemies Liverpool. No matter who you support, it's useless to deny what Peter Schmeichel achieved at Manchester United in the 1990s. After all, he won 5 Premier Leagues with the club, and he remains the only goalkeeper in history to have won the Player of the Year award, and therefore he is our first name on the sheet. Special mention here goes to Bakary Sagna, who made his name as an Arsenal player, having joined from Auxerre, following which he had a 3-year spell at Manchester City. He was France's first choice right back for quite some time as well, with 65 caps to his name where he represented Le Bleu in the 2010 and 2014 World Cup, as well as the 2016 Euros. Sagna was last seen playing for MLS club Montreal Impact. He played 267 times in the Premier League, scoring 4 goals and providing 19 assists. He was twice named in the PFA Team of the Year for the 2007-2008 season, as well as the 2010 and 2011 season. Up next in our special mention, we have Kyle Walker, who made his debut in the Premier League in the 2009-2010 season, nearly a decade ago. Kyle Walker was once the world's most expensive defender after joining Manchester City from Tottenham in a reported £53 million deal back in 2017. He has made 291 appearances in the Premier League so far, having scored 7 goals and 28 assists. With those, he has managed to win 2 Premier League medals so far and has featured in the PFA Team of the Year 3 times as well, 2 times for Manchester City and once for Tottenham. It is still very early, but Aaron Wan-Bissaka looks sure into effect in this list in the future. No one is better than him at defending at the moment, and he's still 22. The same goes for Trent Alexander-Arnold, who is better than Aaron Wan-Bissaka at attacking, has a pinpoint cross, and his free kicks are on point as well. Cafu recently even chose him as a future Ballon d'Or winner. That's definitely something coming from one of the best fullbacks in the history of the game. I also have to add that had Azpilicueta been only a right back, he would have made it to this list easily, but he has spent a lot of time as centre back and is therefore not considered here. So our candidates are Lee Dixon, the man who replaced him, Lauren, Chelsea man Branislav Ivanovic, Pablo Zabaleta, and Gary Neville. So let's start with Lee Dixon, who joined Arsenal from Stoke back in 1988. Now a TV pundit, Lee Dixon was a quarter of the league's first greatest defences. He was an integral part to George Graham's backline at Highbury and later that of Arsene Wenger's. Under the management of George Graham, the Gunners' defensive resolve became legendary, leading to the chant of the 1-0 to Arsenal. Dixon was very much an old-fashioned fullback. Unlike the modern-day player, his primary focus was defending. His positioning was excellent, but he was very precise with deliveries into the box as well, and his timings of when to get forward was excellent as well. After all, he had been a winger in his early career with Burnley. He had a fine first touch with both feet, which allowed him time to recycle the ball and keep attacks alive. He even scored some spectacular long-range efforts for Arsenal. He retired in 2002, having made 305 appearances with 9 goals to his name and 19 assists for Arsenal. During the process, he won 2 Premier League titles in 11 seasons. Up next we have the man who eventually replaced Lee Dixon, the Cameroon international Lauren. Replacing Lee Dixon was never going to be an easy task, but his transition into the team was seamless. Lauren didn't actually start his career as a right back, but he would eventually end up excelling there. Having signed from Mallorca, Lauren was part of the Arsenal team who won the 2001-2002 Premier League. He was also part of the famous Arsenal Invincible squad, which went a whole Premier League season unbeaten in the 2003-2004 campaign. He featured in the PFA Team of the Year for that season. The Frenchman offered solidarity at the back and was decent going forward as well. He later left the club to feature for Portsmouth, where he won the FA Cup. He made a total of 184 appearances in the Premier League with 6 goals and 8 assists to his name. So up next we have Branislav Ivanovic, the current Zenit St. Petersburg centre-back who joined Chelsea in 2008 from Lokomotiv Moscow in a reported $9 million deal. He originally joined the club as a centre-back, but after a run in as a right-back he never looked back. He was a huge threat for Chelsea at set pieces and chipped in with a respectable amount of goals each season for a defender. Ivanovic was a huge favourite during Jose Mourinho's second stint at the club, calling him a competitive animal with a big heart. His performance over the years makes it hard to deny that. He enjoyed a hugely successful spell at Stamford Bridge, making 261 appearances and winning 3 Premier Leagues in the process under Carlos Ancelotti, Jose Mourinho and Antonio Conte. He scored 22 goals and provided 23 assists over the years in the Premier League. He has been part of the PFA Team of the Year as well. He left Chelsea in 2017 on a free transfer to join Zenit St. Petersburg back in Russia, where he is currently the captain. He will certainly go down as one of the most consistent performers of the Roman Abramovich era. So up next we have Pablo Zabaleta. Just a few days after the Argentine international became a Manchester City player, Sheikh Mansour's Abu Dhabi group would buy the club and turn it into a Premier League force. Zaba, as he was known by the few Manchester City fans that they have, became a fan's favourite for his immense work rate and never-die attitude. Very few left wingers got the better of the Argentine, and he was never shy of going forward to help out his team in attack. He has 9 goals and 21 assists to his name as a result to show for his efforts. The Argentine right-back played a key part in Manchester City's rise to dominance, winning the Premier League in the 2011-2012 season as well as the 2013 and 2014 season. He was the only Manchester City player named in the PFA Team of the Year for the 2012-2013 season, highlighting how consistent he was in terms of his performances. Zabaleta is a Manchester City legend, no doubt about that. Having left Manchester City in 2016, he has made 73 appearances so far for West Ham, bringing his tally to 303 appearances in the Premier League. After 3 years at the Hammers, he has left the club now as a free agent, and it still remains to be seen whether he's going to hang out his boots or keep going. Our next and final candidate is Manchester United's legend, Gary Neville. So, how many years in Premier League we're talking here? Around 18, 19, consistency. Alright, cool, we got the left back next. Alright, just kidding. So, listen, alright, I'm going to justify his inclusion here, but I don't think there should be any need to. So, Gary Neville was part of the famous class of '92 that included his brother Phil, Ryan Giggs, Paul Scholes, David Beckham and Nicky Butt, who would go on to dominate English football for around half a decade or so. Never the most talented player, Gary Neville made up his lack of ability through sheer hard work and determination for Manchester United, the club he obviously grew up supporting. He would go on to play for the Red Devils during their most successful period in their history. His link up with his best friend and football icon David Beckham on the right hand side was fantastic, almost telepathic at times. He was rarely beaten in a one-on-one situation since he was very good at reading the game, as is evidenced by his hugely successful career as the nation's leading football pundit with Sky Sport. His crossing was excellent as well, as shown by his 35 assists in the Premier League over the years. Gary Neville retired in 2011 with around 400 appearances for Manchester United in the Premier League, with a trophy haul that includes 8 Premier League, which makes him one of English football's most decorated players of all time. He will not only go down as a Manchester United legend, but also probably the best right back in the history of the Premier League, not because of his sheer ability, but because of his hard work and longevity, with a total of 400 appearances, 5 goals and 35 assists across 20 seasons. So Gary Neville is the next to go in our team. We are quite literally spoiled for choices here. Our first member of the special mention section is Jaap Stam, who only played in England for 3 seasons, having joined from PSV Eindhoven, but is still one of the best to have done so. The classy Dutchman possessed a rare combination of attributes that made him one of the greatest defenders this league has ever seen. He was fast, powerful and perfect on the ball, similar to how Van Dijk is at the moment. It's a pity he was sold by Manchester United at the time, even though he was sold at a profit. Sir Alex Ferguson even admitted later on that it was a mistake to think that the Dutchman was on a decline, but memories of the Holland legend are still cherished at Old Trafford to this day. 3 league titles are the reason why he makes it to the special mention section, but only 3 seasons in the league is the reason why he only makes it to the special section. Up next we have another Sky pundit and one-man club in Jamie Carragher with 508 appearances, 3 goals, 15 assists, but also 7 own goals, which makes him the second in the rankings of most own goals, perhaps not his best achievement. A boyhood Everton fan, he made his debut back in the 96-97 season and played till 12 and 13 season, in a career spanning across 3 decades. While he never won the Premier League, his consistency and longevity earns him a place in this list. He has played across the whole backline and even as a number 6 across his career, but once he was settled at centre-back under Rafa Benitez, you could even say he was as important in defence as Steven Gerrard was in midfield. That's how good he was back then. Up next we have Jamie Carragher's partner in Sami Hyypiä, an absolute steal at just a reported $3 million back in 1999 when he arrived at Liverpool as a relatively unknown player. The solid centre-back became a pillar in the heart of the defence under Gerard Houllier at Anfield. It was clear he was a defender of great stature and ability. He even lasted the period under Rafa Benitez, who had taken the club to a different level. He won pretty much every medal other than the Premier League with Liverpool, even popping up with crucial goals now and then. He made 318 appearances in the Premier League with 33 goals and 8 assists across 12 seasons. Our final member of the special mention crew is Ledley King. I simply have to squeeze him in this list. He would no doubt be higher up this list if it wasn't for his terrible luck with the recurring niggling injuries. The Spurs legend was one of the most gifted centre-backs England has ever produced, no doubt about it. I mean, half of the time he didn't even train and he still played the game. Despite everything, he still managed to make 268 appearances, even chipping in with 10 goals and 8 assists across 16 seasons. So our 10 candidates for the centre-back positions are Tony Adams, his partner in crime Sol Campbell, Manchester United's Rio Ferdinand and his partner Nemanja Vidic, a partnership they had to live up to in Steve Bruce and his partner in crime Gary Pallister, John Terry and his partner and mentor Marcel Desailly, another one of John Terry's partner Ricardo Cavagna, and finally Vincent Kompany. So let's start with Tony Adams. From the Arsenal Academy, Tony Adams made his debut in the First Division as he was known prior to the Premier League. Nicknamed Mr. Arsenal, he is often remembered as a great leader and an inspirational captain, which of course he was, but first and foremost he was an extremely intelligent footballer. He was incredibly good at reading the game and stopping attacks before they were anywhere near in motion. He made 255 appearances in the Premier League with 12 goals and 9 assists to his name across 11 seasons, winning the 97-98 and the 2001-2002 league titles. In 2004 he was even inducted in the English Football Hall of Fame in recognition of his impact on the English game. He's held in very high esteem at the club, and rightly so, as shown by him ending up in 3rd position in the 50 greatest gunners poll on the club's website. Mr. Arsenal remains the only player to captain his side to championship titles across 3 decades, with the first one coming in 1989 and the last one coming in 2002. A statue of Tony Adams was even placed outside Emirates Stadium in celebration of the club's 125th anniversary on the 9th of December 2011. Up next we have Sol Campbell, Tony Adams' defensive partner in his last season. Despite coming from Tottenham's academy, he crossed the North London divide to join Arsenal from fierce rivals Tottenham on a free transfer as well. Campbell was a towering and elegant defender who won the double at Highbury in his first season before becoming a huge part of their Invincibles team. There can be no doubt that he was one of the greatest signings in Arsenal history. After all, in 5 years he did win the Premier League twice. His size, speed, strength made him difficult to get past, and his prowess on the ball meant he slot perfectly into Arsene Wenger's plans. Following Arsenal, he left on a free transfer yet again, only this time to join Portsmouth, where he featured for 3 seasons and he even won the FA Cup. He made 503 appearances with 20 goals and 15 assists to his name in the Premier League. Up next we have Rio Ferdinand, who made his debut in the 95-96 seasons and featured for the Hammers for 7 seasons before he switched to Leeds United in a British record deal of around 18 million. He played for 2 seasons for them before making another big money move to Manchester United in 2002, breaking the record yet again when signing for 30 million. That was also a record fee for a defender at the time as well. He featured for the Red Devils across 13 seasons where he won 6 Premier Leagues before finishing his career at QPR in the 14-15 campaign. An imposing figure at the heart of the defence, he formed an outstanding partnership with Nemanja Vidic as the club dominated English football in the late 2000s. Perhaps the most technically gifted centre-back that has ever graced the Premier League, the former Englandman had pace to burn, which afforded him the ability to clear up any mess he or any other teammate may have created. His partnership with Vidic and with Edwin van der Sar behind them, they kept a record of 14 consecutive clean sheets in 2008-2009 season, the next closest team being Chelsea with 10. He made 504 appearances in total with 11 goals and 8 assists to his name in the Premier League. He was also inducted in the National Football Museum Hall of Fame in 2016. Up next we have the former Serbian international Nemanja Vidic. In what is one of the best January transfers ever, Vidic joined Manchester United from Spartak Moscow. An absolute rock at the heart of the last great Red Devils side, the Serbian won 5 leagues while captaining the side for 3 years. His consistency was perhaps his biggest attribute, constantly displaying fantastic levels of strength, speed and defensive awareness. One of the most imposing defenders to ever play in the Premier League, he formed an excellent partnership with Rio Ferdinand before moving on to Inter Milan, where he played for another season before hanging up his boots. He was an absolute warrior of a player, even putting his head in the way if required. He was also voted Premier League Player of the Season twice and made it to the PFA Team of the Year on 4 occasions. In total, he made 211 appearances with 15 goals and 3 assists to his name. Up next we have half of the Dolly and Daisy partnership, Steve Bruce. During my research I couldn't find out why they had been nicknamed that by their colleagues, to be honest, so if you do know the answer, please drop it down in the comment section. Now let's get back to it. So the Manchester United captain actually never won an England cap, but he did lead his side to 3 Premier League titles. He joined the Manchester side from Norwich back in 1987 to form one of the best defence partnership in the history of the Premier League, along with Gary Pallister, who we will talk about in shortly. It was actually the Geordie defender who netted a brace against Sheffield Wednesday in order to send the Red Devils on their way to the inaugural Premier League crown. And, well, the rest is history. He made 148 appearances in the Premier League era with 11 goals and 5 assists to his name across 4 seasons. Up next we have the other half of the Dolly and Daisy partnership, Gary Pallister. He broke the British transfer record for a defender when he left Middlesbrough for Old Trafford in a reported £2.3 million deal back in 1989. Gary Pallister was just that good that he even represented England before he had even played in the top flight. Alongside Steve Bruce, the pair formed one of the first greatest defences under Sir Alex Ferguson as the Red looked to make their mark on the English game in the 1990s. He won 4 Premier League titles and was even voted PFA Player of the Year in 1992. He made 261 appearances in the Premier League with 9 goals and 6 assists to his name across 10 seasons in the Premier League, out of which he featured for Manchester United for 6 seasons. After 9 years at Old Trafford, he would go back to Premiership New Boys Borough in a reported £2.5 million deal, where he would go on to spend 4 more seasons before he eventually retired. Up next we have Chelsea's greatest ever player, John Terry. The defender has been with the club all his career, winning every single trophy he possibly could. Perhaps not the most liked individual, but the former England captain sums up the British game with his life or death approach to the game. A leader strong in the air, astute reader of the game, it's hard to think what JT couldn't do. As a result of his performances, he was named in the FIFA Pro World 11 for 5 consecutive years between 2005 and 2009. He made 492 appearances for his beloved Chelsea with some vital goals among his 41 goals, and he even has 12 assists to his name. He has been a Premier League champion 5 times. He made his debut back in the 98-99 season and left the club to join Championship side Aston Villa on a free following his last title winning campaign in the 2016-2017 season. So up next we have Marcel Desailly, who joined Chelsea in 1998 from AC Milan, having won the World Cup with France. While he never won the league with the club, Marcel Desailly was crucial in helping Chelsea carve out a reputation as a competitive club prior to the Roman Abramovich era. The World Cup winner has had a distinguished career all over the globe, but showed his true class at Stamford Bridge. He featured in the Premier League across 7 seasons, accumulating a total of 158 appearances with 6 goals and 4 assists to his name. Next we have one of John Terry's partner, Ricardo Cavani. The classy Portuguese defender arrived with Jose Mourinho at Chelsea back in 2004 from Porto. He was integral to the side that only conceded 15 goals throughout the whole campaign in the Premier League. He was the perfect partner for the Blues captain, offering a calm and elegant approach type of play. He made 135 appearances in the Premier League across 7 seasons before leaving the club following the 2009-2010 campaign to join Jose Mourinho in Real Madrid. He won the Premier League in his maiden campaign, the 2004-2005 season, and the following season as well. So our last candidate is Vincent Kompany. He joined Manchester City from Hamburg back in 2008 before the Mansour cash flow. He was actually signed as a midfielder but would go on to thrive at centre-back. He made 265 appearances in the Premier League with 18 goals and 8 assists to his name across 12 seasons he spent at Manchester City, where he won 4 league titles. A leader on the pitch, a gentleman off it, he scored some vital goals that helped clinch at least 2 titles. One of them was his header against Manchester United in the 2011-2012 season, where Manchester City won 1-0. The same season he was awarded the Premier League Player of the Season. He left the club following his last title-winning campaign to join his boyhood club Anderlecht, where he is the current player manager. So let's see who gets into our team. In terms of being at the very top for a very long time in the Premier League, the 4 that stand out the most for me are Tony Adams, Vincent Kompany, John Terry and Rio Ferdinand. Having said that, Vincent Kompany would have had a better chance of making it to this team if his injury record was better, but his niggling injuries in the latter stages of his career did keep him out of 92 Premier League matches. Rio Ferdinand was excellent with his feet, his passing skills and tackling are considered to be his main strengths, and when it comes to aerial battles on both ends on the pitch, I think it's between John Terry and Tony Adams. As a result, I'd have to go with John Terry. I think Rio and John Terry's partnership would work, and it certainly did for England. They started in front of the likes of Martin Keown, Sol Campbell and Jamie Carragher. And that's how they line up in our team. So our special mention here goes to Stuart Pearce, dubbed the Psycho. Pearce was a no-nonsense fullback and was extremely popular with Nottingham Forest fans as well as England fans. He starred for Forest for 12 years between 1985 and 1997 and even won 78 caps for his country as a result. He spent 4 seasons in the Premier League with Nottingham Forest, followed by 2 seasons at Newcastle and a season at West Ham. One of the most ferocious tacklers the league has ever seen, the Nottingham Forest legend would very rarely allow a winger past him. The terms hard and fair comes to mind when describing the left back. He was as uncompromising as they came. In total, he made 202 appearances in the Premier League with 20 goals and 7 assists to his name. Another one in the special mention is Nigel Winterburn. The Arsenal hero was a key figure at Highbury for 13 years, playing at left back in a famous defence with the likes of Tony Adams and Lee Dixon in George Graham's famous back 5. He was after all the man tasked with filling the position for almost a decade. He won the Premier League back in the 97-98 season. He left Arsenal at the end of the 1999-2000 campaign in order to join the Hammers, where he would go on to feature for them for 3 seasons. In total, he made 352 appearances in the Premier League with 5 goals and 19 assists to his name. So let's switch our attention to our candidates. Our candidates for the left back position are Patrice Evra, Ashley Cole, Dennis Irwin, Graham Lasso and Leighton Baines. Let's start with Dennis Irwin. Dennis Irwin was signed from Oldham Athletic for around £625,000. At the time, he was probably the best left back and right back in the league. His performances were consistently good, and 8 or 9 out of 10 every single week. He was still Manchester United's first left back in his mid-30s. While one of the most solid defenders the club has ever known, Irwin also had the reputation of a dead ball specialist, expertly taking free kicks or penalties. He was inducted in the National Football Museum Hall of Fame back in 2016, same year as Rio Ferdinand. In total, he scored 22 goals in 368 appearances for Manchester United across 12 years, after which he would go on to join Wolves on a free transfer, where he featured for another 2 seasons before hanging up his boots. He won the Premier League 7 times with Manchester United, and he made 328 appearances in the Premier League with 18 goals and 25 assists to his name. That's including the ones at Wolverhampton as well. Now we'll switch our attention to Patrice Evra. He was essentially the heir to Dennis Irwin's throne as the second world-class left-back of the Sir Alex Ferguson dynasty. In what is one of the best ever January transfers, he joined Manchester United from Monaco during the same transfer window that Nemanja Vidic was signed in. Patrice Evra won the Premier League 5 times with Manchester United, with his last one coming in the 2012-2013 campaign. In total, he made 278 appearances in the Premier League with 7 goals and 21 assists to his name, with 5 of those appearances coming in a West Ham shirt across the 2017-2018 season and the 2018-2019 season, after which he essentially retired. He featured in the PFA Team of the Year 3 times as well. An academy graduate, he went on to feature for the Gunners' first team, winning 2 leagues including the Invincible one before a switch to Chelsea in 2006 in a reported £6.7 million deal, where William Gallas went across London to join Arsenal as part of the deal. From that move, he was even fined for his part in an illegal approach from Chelsea. He would go on to spend 8 years winning another Premier League along the way amongst other numerous trophies, before leaving for Roma in a free transfer. In total, he made 385 appearances with 15 goals and 31 assists to his name. At one point, you could even say he was the best left back in the world. He featured in the PFA Team of the Year 4 times as well. Next we have Graeme Le Saux. Le Saux played for Chelsea, Blackburn and Southampton in the Premier League during a 16-year career. In a time when Stuart Pearce was England's first choice left back, Le Saux still won 36 caps for England. He became English football's most expensive defender after rejoining Chelsea for £5 million back in 1997. In total, he made 327 appearances with 12 goals and 44 assists to his name. He won the Premier League in the 94-95 season with Blackburn as well. He featured in the PFA Team of the Year twice, once for Chelsea and one for Blackburn. Our last candidate is the recently retired Leighton Baines. He can pretty much do it all: defend, attack, take a nice free kick. Baines has been known for his excellent crossing ability and free kicks since making his senior debut back in 2002. In his prime, he was consistently linked with Manchester United, but the move never materialised. But his performances did lead to him being in the PFA Team of the Year twice. He is perhaps unfortunate to have played in the same era as Ashley Cole. In total, he made 420 appearances with 32 goals and 53 assists to his name. He had 3 seasons at Wigan before featuring for Everton for 13 seasons. From our candidates, it's down to 2 men for me: Ashley Cole or Dennis Irwin. But we'll go with Ashley Cole, who just slightly nicks it in front of Dennis Irwin. And that's how he looks in our team. In terms of special mention, here goes to John Barnes, who made 201 appearances in the Premier League with 28 goals and 29 assists to his name. He featured for Liverpool for 6 seasons before spending 2 seasons at Newcastle and then a season at Charlton Athletic, where he would eventually go on to retire. His best performance was no doubt prior to the Premier League era. He had an awful 92-93 season with some niggling injuries, to be fair, and later went on to become a midfielder due to their injuries robbing him of his pace. Prior to that, with the ball at his feet, dribbling at his best, he was certainly among the best in the business. He went on to be inducted in the Hall of Fame back in 2015. Other options are the late Gary Speed, his Welsh compatriot Ryan Giggs, Eden Hazard, Robert Pires and Steve McManaman. Let's start with Gary Speed. He made his debut with Leeds prior to the Premier League era, back in the 2nd Division actually, before being promoted in the 1st Division for the 1991 season. He played for 4 seasons for Leeds in the Premier League, winning the Premier League in the inaugural season and being in the PFA Team of the Year for the 92-93 season. He followed that up with 2 seasons at Everton, the club he grew up supporting. He was voted as the club's Player of the Season in his first season itself. Following issues with the manager in his 2nd season, he would go on to leave for Newcastle, where he would feature for 8 seasons. After that, he moved to Bolton Wanderers, where he became the first player to make 500 Premier League appearances in the history. He ended up playing for Bolton for 5 more seasons before heading for the Championship with Sheffield United, where he eventually retired. He was the ultimate professional, and like Bolton fans say, there's only one Gary Speed. In total, he made 535 appearances with 80 goals and 44 assists to his name in the Premier League. Up next we have Ryan Giggs, who was part of the class of '92. He won 13 Premier League championships and made over 600 appearances with 109 goals to his name and 162 assists. He might not always have been the most exciting player, but he was consistent and reliable for a long period of time. He made his debut prior to the branding of the Premier League season and went on to play for over 20 seasons in the Premier League. He featured in the PFA Team of the Year for 6 times. He featured in the PFA Team of the Century as well. He remains the only player to have featured in 22 consecutive seasons, as well as the only player to have scored in 21 consecutive seasons. And in all fairness, I can't see that changing anytime soon. If we were to state all his records, we'd be here for a very long time. Up next we have the Real Madrid man Eden Hazard. He was signed from Lille in the summer window of 2012 following Chelsea's Champions League win. He made his debut in the 12-13 season and won the PFA Young Player of the Year in his second season. That was followed by the Footballers' Writers Association Football of the Year Award and the PFA's Player of the Year Award for the 2014-15 season when he won his first Premier League title. If those awards don't quite convince you about his place on this list, then his stats definitely should. 245 appearances in the league, 85 goals and 54 assists. Them assists led to him winning the 18-19 Playmaker Award, where he registered 15 assists. He also went on to feature in the PFA Team of the Year for 4 times across 7 seasons. Over the course of his Premier League spell, he has been champion twice, the 2014-15 season and the 2018-19 season. Up next we have Robert Pires. The World Cup and Euros winner was signed from Marseille to replace the outgoing Marc Overmars, who was heading for Barcelona in a record deal at the time. Blessed with electric pace and a natural flair, he scored some crazy goals for Arsenal. He was part of the great Invincible team of the 2003-2004 campaign that went the entire season unbeaten. Along with Thierry Henry and Beckham, he formed one of the best attacks the Premier League has ever seen. He had 6 seasons with Arsenal, with the last one being the 2005-2006 season before leaving for Villarreal. He had 1 more season in the Premier League though, the 2010-2011 season with Aston Villa. He featured in the PFA Team of the Year for 3 times across 8 seasons in the Premier League, with 62 goals and 41 assists to his name in 198 appearances. Up next we have Steve McManaman. He made 275 appearances in the Premier League with 41 goals and 59 assists to his name. He played for Manchester City and Liverpool for a combined 9 seasons, but it is his spell at Liverpool that gets him a place in this list. He left for Real Madrid on a free in 1999, where he became the first English player to win the Champions League with a non-English club. Well, before we go completely off track, let's get back to talking about the Premier League. McManaman was actually an Everton fan growing up, but contract issues led to him signing for Liverpool, where he made his debut in Kenny Dalglish last season back in 1990 in the First Division, as it was known back then of course. Alongside Ryan Giggs, he developed a reputation as one of English football's best emerging youngsters. While questions were asked about his performances in the last season, there are no questions whatsoever that he was the starman of that Liverpool side for a long time, with Peter Schmeichel stating that even Ferguson would focus mainly on how to stop Steve McManaman. His performances in the last couple of matches earned him a deserving standing ovation at Anfield. We have to go with Ryan Giggs here simply due to his consistency and for how long he did it. He did it for over a period of 20 seasons, which I don't think is going to be matched anytime soon. So, here's Giggsy in our team. This position is the main reason why I made this starting 11 in the first place, and I believe this is the main area where people will have their own opinions. I'm not going to dwell on the special mentions here, because simply there are way too many. Due to the formation, there are a few key players that miss out in Bergkamp, Eric Cantona, Makelele, and Matt Letitia. So we will head straight to the candidates. There are two positions to be filled out here. Here we have Paul Scholes, Roy Keane, Michael Carrick, Steven Gerrard, Frank Lampard, Patrick Vieira, David Silva, Yaya Toure, Cesc Fabregas, and of course, current player Kevin De Bruyne. Part of the class of '92, he came up the academy and went on to make 499 appearances with 107 goals and 55 assists to his name in the Premier League. The one club man made his full debut in the 94-95 season and went on to win the Premier League 11 times, more than any other English player in the history of the game. His first title came in the 95-96 season and last title came in the 12-13 season, having come out of the retirement the previous season. He was inducted in the English Football Hall of Fame in 2008. He made the PFA Team of the Year 3 times. In his final match in the Premier League against West Bromwich Albion, he earned his 97th Premier League yellow card, at the time the third most in the history of the Premier League. Alex Ferguson called the Irishman his best ever player. He was signed from Nottingham Forest following the side's relegation in July 1993 for around £4 million, a British transfer record at the time. What is not really talked about is that he actually already agreed to join Kenny Dalglish Blackburn Rovers but had some issue with paperwork that led to Sir Alex Ferguson to intervene and sign him over the weekend. He became captain following the surprise retirement of Eric Cantona and was the heart and soul of the 99 treble side despite missing the final of the Champions League. He made 366 appearances with 39 goals, 33 assists to his name. He won the Premier League 7 times, with his first one coming in his first season itself, and the last one coming in the 2002-2003 season. He won the PFA Players Player of the Year and the FWA Footballer of the Year award for the 1999-2000 season. He made the PFA Team of the Year 5 times. He was inducted into the English Football Hall of Fame in 2004 in recognition of his impact on the English game. His last season in the Premier League came in the 2005-2006 season, after which he left for Celtic, where he only had a brief spell. Michael Carrick was very underrated for his time at Manchester United, I believe. In all fairness, I was torn up between him and Fernandinho for this list, but Carrick was a mainstay in a Manchester United midfield that dominated the Premier League, so he does get the nod for me. He made 481 appearances with 24 goals and 40 assists to his name. He won the Premier League 5 times, first one in the 2006-2007 campaign and the last one in Sir Alex Ferguson last season in the 2012-2013 campaign. He started his career with West Ham in the 1999-2000 season, making his debut at Bradford City. He went on to join Tottenham Hotspurs for the 2004-2005 season, where he spent 3 seasons before joining Manchester United. He retired at the end of the 2017-2018 season. Up next we have Steven Gerrard. Gerrard did everything for Liverpool during his career. He defended well, he attacked, he scored some outstanding goals for the club, and for me he is Liverpool's best ever player. He won the PFA Player of the Year for the 2005-2006 season and the FWA Footballer of the Year for the 2008-2009 season. He made the PFA Team of the Year 8 times. He made 504 appearances with 120 goals and 92 assists. The couple of times Liverpool did come close to winning the title, Gerrard was instrumental. Unfortunately for him, the slip against Chelsea cost him his first league and the league for Liverpool after such a long period of time. It was painful to see him being the culprit for Liverpool losing the league, but it is what it is. His most famous night came away from the Premier League with the Champions League, but this does not count here. Well, we've mentioned Steven Gerrard, so we have to mention Frank Lampard. Frank Lampard ran the midfield just like Gerrard for Chelsea for many years and scored so many goals. The difference here is Frank Lampard actually won Premier League titles. He won the FWA Footballer of the Year award for the 2004-2005 season. He made the PFA Team of the Year 3 times. He made 609 appearances with 177 goals and 102 assists to his name. He has won 3 Premier Leagues. He scored 22 goals in the 2009-2010 campaign. He was so prolific in front of the goal that he's actually the current 5th top goal scorer. Well, we've mentioned Roy Keane before, so we can't not mention Patrick Vieira. The Frenchman was the symbol of Arsenal's wresting of the title from Old Trafford. He wore the captain's armband and led arguably the greatest team of the Premier League era on a 49-game unbeaten run. He's one of the greatest English Premier League midfielders ever, and hence why he makes the list. He made the PFA Team of the Year 6 times. He made 307 appearances with 31 goals and 34 assists. He spent 10 seasons at Arsenal where he won 3 titles and where he captained the side to the Invincible title before leaving, then coming back to the Premier League where he spent 2 seasons at Manchester City. Vieira has been that good that arguably there are still talks that he has not been adequately replaced at Arsenal despite it being so long since he left the team. Up next is Cesc Fabregas, who made the PFA Team of the Year 2 times. He made 350 appearances with 50 goals and 111 assists to his name across 2 spells in the Premier League. Spent 8 years at Arsenal before leaving for Barcelona. He came back to the Gunners' rivals though, and for Mourinho's second spell at Chelsea, where he ended up spending 5 seasons winning 2 titles, with the Blues, the first one being under Mourinho and the second one being with Conte. He's actually second in the list of the most assists in the Premier League, and therefore cannot be omitted from this list. We will quickly move on to David Silva, who made the PFA Team of the Year 2 times. He spent 10 years in the Premier League, winning 4 Premier League titles, with his first one coming in the Aguero season in the 2011-2012 campaign, and the last one coming in the 2018-2019 season. He's one of the most likeable players to have ever played in the Premier League, and his first touch has always been a class different. In total, he made 309 appearances with 60 goals and 93 assists to his name. Up next we have someone who played closely with David Silva in Yaya Toure. He made the PFA Team of the Year 2 times. He spent 8 seasons in the Premier League, winning 3 league titles. In total, he made 230 appearances with 62 goals and 32 assists to his name. He was part of the team who won the first Premier League for Manchester City as well. Silva, De Jong, Yaya Toure. A great midfield trio indeed. Our final candidate is the one running the show at the moment in Kevin De Bruyne. He made the PFA Team of the Year once so far. He actually has spent 6 seasons so far, winning the Premier League twice. So far he has made 155 appearances with 66 assists to his name. He looks more and more influential as the seasons go by. He's the perfect player for the 3-8 position in my opinion, dictating the tempo and acting almost as a quarterback who launches attacks with his vision and decisiveness and accurate passing. So in terms of who makes it, in a 4-4-2 formation, one midfielder is usually more attacking and the other is more defensive. Both of them need to contribute at both ends on the pitch. So for the defensive role in a 4-4-2 formation, it is between Vieira and Keane. I don't think anyone would argue that. But since 1993, Roy Keane was at the heart of the Manchester United midfield, won everything there was to win as a player. Keane's steel in the midfield of the park cannot be overlooked. He wasn't the most entertaining player to watch, nor the best centre midfielder in possession, to be honest, not even in the top 10 or arguably 20 in those categories. But he was a ball winner who dominated the game. No one sums up the league's trademark grit like Roy Keane, Vieira being the only one who comes close to it. The only thing that separates the two for me is the amount of titles Roy won. For the remaining midfielder spot for me is between Kevin De Bruyne, Paul Scholes, Frank Lampard and Steven Gerrard. However, if we're looking at longevity, we'll have to omit Kevin De Bruyne for this time round. But for sure, the way he is going, we could definitely see him making this list in the future. Making the spot in the future, rather, I should say. So, with regards with Paul Scholes, Frank Lampard, Steven Gerrard, a case can be made for every single one of them, to be honest. If you want a passionate, charismatic leader who often shows up in the biggest of moments, then the obvious choice here is Steven Gerrard. At his brilliant best, Paul Scholes would have easily slotted into Pep Guardiola's dominant Barcelona side. Certainly amongst the best box-to-box midfielder of all time, Lampard was a phenomenal asset for Chelsea. He is the only midfielder in the Premier League history to have scored 150 or more goals. However, for this case, I will go with Paul Scholes, who proved to be the perfect foil for Roy Keane, had a knack of controlling the tempo of the game. I mean, if Zidane and Xavi say they idolise you, then that has to matter for something. Scholes versus Lampard versus Gerrard will forever be a matter of which player you prefer to watch, really. So I'm going with Paul Scholes. This is how they look in the team. We have limited options here. I could have had the likes of Antonio Valencia or Aaron Lennon, who have been in the Premier League for a very long time, but are not up to the level of the other candidates we got here. Arjen Robben was here too, but for a way too short amount of time to be here in the list. Special mention here goes to Paul Merson. He made 280 appearances with 46 goals and 43 assists to his name. He featured for Arsenal for 5 seasons in the Premier League before switching to Middlesbrough and then 5 seasons at Aston Villa before dropping down to the Championship or League One as it was known back then. Our candidates for the right flank are Ronaldo, Beckham, Ljungberg, Duff and Joe Cole. To be honest, for Damien Duff I could have had him on either side. He made his name playing for Blackburn Rovers for 5 seasons before moving to Chelsea in a big money move. He was renowned for his ability to beat a man and his pinpoint left-footed crossing. He would win 2 Premier League titles at Stamford Bridge in the 2004 season and the 2005-2006 season during a 3-season spell at the club before moving on to Newcastle, where he would go on to spend 3 more seasons in the Premier League. He then moved on to Fulham, where he would feature for 5 seasons before leaving for a brief spell in the A-League in Australia for Melbourne City, and then the League of Ireland with Shamrock Rovers, where he eventually hanged up his boots. In total, he made 392 appearances with 54 goals and 55 assists to his name. Up next we have Cristiano Ronaldo. He signed for Manchester United for around 12 million from Sporting Lisbon in 2003, making him the most expensive teenager in history of the Premier League. An unknown fact is that he actually requested the number 28 shirt since he wore that at Sporting, but instead he received the number 7 shirt, which is now so synonymous with his brand. George Best praised his debut performance, calling it the most exciting debut he had ever seen. It was surely a sign of things to come. During the 2006-07 season, he would go on to break the 20-goal barrier. For the 2007-08 season, he won the PFA's Players Player, Fans Player and Young Player of the Year award, as well as the FWA's Footballer of the Year award, becoming the first player to win all 4 main PFA and FWA honours. For the 2007 and 8 season, his 31 league goals earned him the Premier League Golden Boot as well as the European Golden Shoe, which made him the first winger to win the latter award. For the 2008-2009 season, he won the Ballon d'Or, becoming the first Manchester United player to win it after George Best, and won the FIFA Puskas Award for his goal against Porto. He featured in the PFA Team of the Year for 4 times across 7 seasons. He made 196 appearances with 84 goals and 34 assists to his name. He has been the Premier League champion 3 times. He left Manchester United for Real Madrid for a world record fee at the time, where he went on to break numerous records, bringing his Ballon d'Or tally to 5 and switching to the left winger position, and then at a later stage the striker's position. Next we have someone else who wore that famous Manchester United number 7 shirt in David Beckham. The most famous of the class of 92, he made his Premier League debut for Manchester United in 1995 in a goalless draw against Leeds. He was the perfect wideman in a 4-4-2 system, with his crossing ability and passing range amongst the very best. His partnership and understanding with Gary Neville was almost telepathic at times. Prior to the 97-98 season, he was given the famous number 7 shirt. He ended up being runner-up for the Ballon d'Or in 1999, the year of the famous trouble, and twice runner-up for the FIFA World Player of the Year. He made 265 appearances with 62 goals and 80 assists to his name for Manchester United. He won the Premier League titles 6 times in total. His first title came in the 95-96 season, and the last one came in the 2002-2003 season, after which he left for Real Madrid. In total, he featured in the PFA Team of the Year 4 times across 10 seasons. He was inducted in the English Football Hall of Fame in 2008. Up next we have Freddie Ljungberg, or Carl Fredrik Ljungberg should I say. Ljungberg was signed from Halmstad from Sweden in a reported $3 million deal. He endeared himself to Arsenal fans from the get-go by scoring on his debut against then title rivals Manchester United after coming on from the bench. His best form came in the 2001-2002 season, where he featured mainly as a right midfielder, scoring some vital goals which led to Arsenal winning the league title. He featured 30 times in the league in the 2003-2004 season again, playing a vital role as the Gunners went the whole campaign unbeaten. Following some niggling injuries, he left the club for West Ham United in July 2007, where he played for a single season before brief spells in a number of clubs. In his 12 seasons in the Premier League, he made 241 appearances with 48 goals and 29 assists to his name, winning 2 Premier League titles in the way. Our final candidate here is Joe Cole. He truly was magical on his day. Having came up from the West Ham youth system, he made his debut with West Ham in the 98-99 season. He played for the Hammers for 6 seasons before leaving the club following their relegation, or remains the club relegated with the most amount of points, 42. For that season he won Hammer of the Year award. He made the switch to Chelsea in a reported $6.6 million deal, where he featured for 7 seasons, winning 3 Premier League titles on the way. He made the PFA Team of the Year for the 2005-2006 season, the year he won his 2nd title. He ended up winning Chelsea Player of the Year in the 2008 season. He left for Chelsea on a free, where he featured for 2 seasons with a season in the middle away from the Premier League, before moving back to his boyhood club West Ham and then finally Aston Villa. In the Premier League he made 378 appearances with 46 goals and 36 assists to his name. Amongst all the candidates here, we have to go for Cristiano Ronaldo, especially considering that he grew into arguably the best player in the world during his time in the Premier League. His penultimate season saw him score 31 goals in 34 games. That was outrageous numbers back then and even now. Despite having his best years away from the Premier League, he's still in the conversation for the greatest Premier League player ever. He's gonna go down as one of the all-time greats without any shadow of a doubt. With this addition, this is how our team looks for the time being. Ruud van Nistelrooy misses out here on both candidates and special mention section due to his longevity. If we're going to talk about the special mentions, there's going to be a very long list here, so we'll just skip that. But to mention a few, we'll go with Ian Wright, Andrew Cole, Robin van Persie, Didier Drogba and Robbie Fowler. Our candidates here for the striker position are Thierry Henry, Sergio Aguero, Wayne Rooney, Alan Shearer and Michael Owen. While Thierry Henry's tenure might have been shorter than his peers in this list, he was simply phenomenal. His pairing with Bergkamp was pure magic. Arguably the greatest player in the Premier League history, Henry spent over a decade as the leading foreign goal scorer. He currently holds the record for the most assists in the season as well, along with Kevin De Bruyne. He bagged in 4 golden boots and won 2 titles with Arsenal, including the Invincibles title. The guy even has a statue outside of Arsenal Stadium. That's how highly he's rated. It's astonishing that Aguero has only won the Golden Boot once, but the City legend is a no-brainer on this list as a 4-time champion and the league's new record-scoring non-British player. He has made 265 appearances with 180 goals to his name. That's approximately 1 goal every other match. Despite being a Manchester United and England's leading goal scorer, Wayne Rooney was not an out-and-out goal scorer. He loved dropping deeper to pick up the ball and creating chances for his teammate. A top player for Manchester United, England and the Premier League, he made 491 appearances with 208 goals and 103 appearances. He is the only one alongside Alan Shearer to have scored 200 plus goals in the Premier League. Speaking of Alan Shearer, he's our next candidate. He's the all-time leading goal scorer in the Premier League history, an outright number 9 who got in the box and scored loads of goals for a long period of time. He's probably not the most talented, that will be Robbie Fowler or Henry, but they didn't score as much as Shearer did. Shearer has 260 Premier League goals, 52 more than second place Wayne Rooney and 96 more than the nearest playing competitor in Sergio Aguero. Famous for his penalties, headers and fox in the box finishes, his net busting volley against Everton is one of the league's best ever goals too. In terms of technical ability, Shearer wouldn't even be in the top 10 for strikers. Realistically though, strikers are there for one reason, to score goals, and nobody was better than Big Al to do that. Our last candidate is Alan Shearer's recently rival in Michael Owen. He finds himself on the list based on his performances for Liverpool. In his first season, he finished joint top scorer with 18 goals to his name, a feat he would go on to repeat the following year as well. Following a trouble in cups in 2001, he won the Ballon d'Or, after which he left for Liverpool in the 2003-2004 season to join Real Madrid in a reported $8 million deal, only to come back to the Premier League a season afterwards to join Newcastle for a club record fee. He ended up lasting 5 seasons with Newcastle, suffering relegation under Shearer that season, which led to the feud amongst the pair. After that, he did the unthinkable and joined in Manchester United, where injuries restricted his appearances, but he did score against Manchester City in a 7-goal thriller in the dying moments of the game, and also won the 2010-2011 Premier League. He left United to join Stoke City before retiring in 2013. In total, he made 326 appearances where he scored 150 goals with 31 assists to his name. He was inducted in the English Football Hall of Fame in 2014. In terms of who takes it, the nail on here is Alan Shearer. And for the other spot, I will have to go with Thierry Henry, just simply because how outstanding he was for that period amount of time he was in the Premier League. As for manager, there's only one serious option here, and that is Sir Alex Ferguson. No one has won more Premier League than him, but special mention goes to Arsene Wenger for his invincible run and Claudio Ranieri for what he achieved in the game, as well as Jose Mourinho's for that first Chelsea he created. If you enjoyed the video, please like and subscribe and let us know what you want to see in the comments below.